What's your name?
My name is Cardi Cornish.
And you a legend?
I'm a legend.
You're a legend here in Baltimore City. Where we at right now?
We live in the 17, Pennsylvania Avenue. The legendary Pennsylvania Avenue.
Man, the last time I saw you here, you were doing something just across the street here. What were you doing?
Oh yeah, I had some food left over from an event. We brung it out. We fed a couple of people, man.
Why you do that?
Nice soul food.
Why you do that?
Man, the love that God has shown me in Christ, man, it overflows. That's how it overflows.
That's right.
We got more than we can use.
Already was high within San Antonio, Winchester community, but the age group is getting younger. Children under the age of 18 being murdered in San Antonio has a high peak right now. So our goal is to catch the children.
You're going hard, man. You're going hard on that man today.
So what do you think, Mr. Mayor? You got manufacturing right here, helping our young people despite all of the challenges in the city of Baltimore, right here on North Avenue.
No, it's really about the growth. Just knowing where, being there when they were down in Fort Covington and seeing how far it's grown. Like you said earlier, like getting the sorbet, you know, where we got the sorbet at the beginning, but now being able to, when I'm at Cannon Yards, get it, or anytime I'm down at Harbor Place to get it, and folks to not even know, but they gonna know now that like this is coming from young people in West Baltimore, right there in West Baltimore on North Avenue, where they think nothing great comes from, but they can see it in what the young people do.
Here on the bank of Mississippi, down right there, French Ford Mathis. A beautiful town, Baltimore. Just leaving Algiers, which is going to give you an update. 10 years since Katrina. The news. All right, y'all, this is what I came to New York for. Besides the Black Wall Street Awards, we're going in here and get some of this real good jerk chicken. Johnny Glover, out.
I feel the warmth of your skin. Just the touch of your hand makes me tremble within.
But we need to feed our loved ones. DOTS needs to rescind this package policy program so that our loved ones are able to eat every day in that filthy facility that
we have some stars in the building.
First name's Doni, last name's Glover, in it to win it for the long haul, baby. Tiger Davis, why are you smiling?
Hey, I smile every time I see you, Doni. You know I'm so proud of you, man. You know, you're one of the young brothers who have carried on. And then another reason I'm smiling, man, is I see my buddy down there, Bob Fulton. Yes, sir. One of the long-time freedom fighters who's never given up on the battle.
What's going on, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing well, and enjoying life. You know, it's a little different being 82 than 72.
Yeah,
but
it makes a difference.
It just the same.
It makes a difference. It makes a difference. But
yes, it does.
I'm not sure who's 82. He don't look like you.
Yeah, hey, I'm rolling right on. I hit 82.
Doni, you 82?
September.
No, sir. I just turned 59.
Hey, look, you're the same age as well, no, my youngest kid will be 58 in November. So,
wow.
You know, I've got 3 of them that's Social Security eligible, man.
Wow.
But look, the beauty of it all is I have 9 grandchildren and 15 great-grandchildren.
Wow.
And I love each and every one of them, man. Each one is.
Do you know them all by name?
I call them by the numbers. Hey, look, the youngest one, you know, I call her number 15, right? She said, "Pop up." My name is Bailey, not 15.
Hey, wait a minute. No, hey, did you say pop?
No, yeah, that's what she calls me, Pop.
Yeah, no. I'm gonna have to take that away. There's too many pop-pops out here.
Yeah, but I tell you, I love it, and I try to get to all their graduations. Like number 15, she just graduated from pre-K, and that was a big thing for her. And I went there, taking pictures and all. I'm beginning to, this is the real beauty of life when you can look at your children, then you look at your grandchildren. Now you're looking at your great grandchildren, and you're seeing all the differences in the generations. And it's enlightening, but it's also a thrill too. You get a joy inside when you see them young ones.
Oh, yeah.
Like I told my grandson, I say, look, boy, there ain't nowhere in the world you can tell a lie about this one, because this child look just like you. And look, it's like picking her up. It's like picking you up 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's also a challenge. It's also a challenge. The challenge is the younger they are, the more you, and the fact that we still here means there's still more for us to do.
Mm-hmm. That's for certain.
Yeah.
So Tiger,
it gives me a new lease on life.
Yep.
Because I have to live through them. Like one of the old philosophers said, I have, two lives: my life and the life of my children. Yeah. And so now I'm looking now not only at my children, but grandchildren, great-grandchildren. So I have an opportunity to impact their lives and help them develop their own destiny in this world.
So listen, on this date in 1776, the Continental Congress passed a resolution saying that these united colonies are of right, ought to be free and independent states. In 1917, on this date, July 2nd, rioting erupted in East St. Louis, Illinois, as white mobs attacked black residents. At least 50 and as many as 200 people, most of them black, are believed to have died in the violence. But we're here to talk about what happened on this date in 1964. Amen. President Lyndon Johnson signed into law a sweeping civil rights bill passed by Congress prohibiting discrimination and segregation based on race, color, sex, religion, or national origin. Tiger, you made this known yesterday. Why don't you lead this off?
Well, during this particular time period from 1960 to 1964, I was in the military, and this was a big issue within the military. In fact, discrimination was so rampant in the military, because you have to remember now, most of your military bases, training bases, were down south, where the weather was warm, whereby you could train, the entire year. So all of us who went in the military, we had to face this kind of discrimination and things like housing, public accommodations, and all of that. And so what had occurred, President Kennedy convened what he called the President's Committee on Equal Opportunity in the Armed Forces. And it was known as the Giselle Committee, named after its the guy who later became a judge, Gerhard Giselle. Okay, and what this committee did, they partnered with Whitney Young and the Urban League, and they went throughout the country interviewing soldiers and interviewing communities around this country on the plight of African-American soldiers. Because now remember, this is the early 1960s, 61, 62, 63. And so all of this is what led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, July the 2nd. And one of the reasons I bring this to the forefront is because most issues, the resolution of most issues dealing with the social fabric of our society started within the military. because the military is a very controlled society. And, if you start there, you can work it through the main society. But now, people like Strom Thurmond were diametrically opposed to what they saw taking place. And of course, the military commanders have always had a problem with what they viewed as social engineering. And they said that, look, the military is not a place for social engineering, but everything starts with the military. Even if you look at Don't Ask, Don't Tell, it all starts in the military, because this is one place where the government can control the entire unit or what takes place. And so I was very proud. I saw all of this during my time in the military. And then by the time I get home in 1964, I'm seeing the results of the March on washington, which took place in August of 1963. Because if you look at what transpired in that or what was put in that civil rights bill, this was you could say this was handmade by A. Philip Randolph. So that March on Washington is what propelled the Johnson administration, which was a continuation of the Kennedy administration, to get that bill passed. And they had to use I think Mike Mansfield was the Senate Majority Leader. And they didn't run it through that committee because the Judiciary Committee was headed by Eastland of Mississippi. And so they had to use a little slick maneuver to bypass the Judiciary Committee to bring it to the floor on second reader. And so I remembered that because I was just starting school at that time, and we discussed that in Dr. Gill's class, Bob, because, Dr. Gill was always on that civil rights stuff. And so we discussed these kinds of things in class. And so I'm real happy to say that, hey, man, I was right there watching history take place. And that act opened the door and began a process that the next year you get the Voting Rights Act, and then later on in 68, you get the Housing Act. So this was the beginning of something good, because we had not had a civil rights bill passed. One was passed in 1957, but other than that one, I think you got to go back to about 1875 before you had a civil rights bill.
With 6 wavering senators providing a 4-vote margin of victory, the final tally stood at 71 to 29. 27 Republicans and 44 Democrats joined forces to support cloture. They were opposed by nay votes from 6 Republicans and 21 Democrats. The Senate civil rights proponents had achieved a remarkable victory. Mr. Bob, what do you recall?
Well, I was in the 10th grade.
Me a child.
And we didn't get a lot of current news down on the shore back in those days. So I don't remember a lot of the events leading up to or immediately following the enactment of the Civil Rights Act of '64. My personal involvement with it came mostly later on when I started handling Title VII cases, employment discrimination cases. That was one of the many titles, Title IX and other titles that were part of that same act. But let me say this: the problem, all of those things were good, but they all started on the wrong premise. They started with the premise that we were inferior as a matter of by nature and by law. That's the problem. That the civil rights movement, when people say today we've got a long way to go, that's really the hidden message is we ain't never going to get there. Mm-hmm. Because the reality of it is, if we agree that there's some place to go, then we ought to be able to define where it is. We ought to be able to say when do we arrive? And you notice that's always been absent. And the reason that's always been absent is because we've never ever come to grips with the fact that fundamentally this nation has never ever acknowledged or accepted or agreed that black folk were equal to white people. Never. And the problem with the civil rights movement, they accepted that principle and moved on from there. They kicked the can down the road. Now I don't blame anybody for that, because like my grandmother and great grandmother, they did what they did to survive the time, because the threat to them was more than intellectual and academic. The threat to them was real and personal. Those bodies hanging from the trees were live when they went up there. As if you saw the interview with Jesse Jackson a few days ago, not Jesse Jackson, Reggie Jackson a few days ago, when he was talking about what he went through as a baseball player. I mean, he said, if it hadn't been for Raleigh Fingers and some other folks, he'd have been hanging from a tree, because he wasn't built to take the kind of things that he was subjected to as a human being, as a man. Our problem today is we still are not recognized as equal to white folks as human beings. See, it should have been civil rights. It should have been human rights. And it should have been focusing on what white folk gave to us. We should have been focusing on our God-given rights, which white folks didn't give and didn't have the opportunity or right to take away. That's what's been missing. That's why white supremacy is still the most prevalent and dominant issue in society today. And that war is still being fought. That was not eradicated by the Civil Rights Act of 1964 or any other Civil Rights Act, because they all assumed and avoided that as a principle, as a starting point.
Is it white supremacy or the notion of white supremacy? Because my mother told me that no one is better than me. I'm better than no one.
Well, perception is reality, Donnie, particularly when it's held by the people who have the authority to implement their perception.
What makes someone superior over you or me or Delegate Davis?
No, they're not inherently. Don't get me wrong, and they're not by nature. God didn't create unequal beings. God didn't create white and black people. God created people of different colors. We labeled them white and black. We were not black. We were not black by accident. We were black by design.
Well, what is wrong with a person that when they try to say that they are supreme to someone else, yet it's like New Yorkers. You go to New York, they give you liquor all day long, but they won't give you no food. They come down here to Baltimore, you can't keep them out your refrigerator. What is this unevenness? Why are you in my refrigerator? Why are you in Africa taking all of my resources, but yet you are superior? I don't understand, Tiger.
Well, part of the problem is us too, because we accept the premise of white superiority. For example, look, and I talk to my young people about this all the time. I say, look, we built America. Everything about America that's good, we built. I don't care whether you're talking about defending America from day one. 9,000 blacks fought in the Revolutionary War, to defend the right of America to exist. You come forward all the way to the day. Blacks have always been in the forefront defending this country. So no other group in this country has done more to defend America than people of African heritage. If you look at the culture of this country, where did the culture of the country go? I don't care whether you're talking about country and Western music, whatever you're talking about. Even if you look at the white boys wearing the pants all down their ass today, hey, the culture came from black people. Fred Astaire Fred Astaire stole everything Bilbo Jangle Robinson did. I don't care what you talk about in this culture, it came from black people. If you're talking about STEM, from Benjamin Banneker to George Washington Carver, and in between and thereafter, STEM has always been the province of African people. We're the ones who, white folks didn't do no work, so how they know how to do any damn thing?
Everything from the wash machine to the iron board.
So that's STEM that come from us. But all of a sudden now, our kids act like they can't do math when, we were the ones who handled math in the old days. Now, you take it beyond that, this would not be a democracy if it were not for black people fighting to make it one. Okay, so I don't care however you look at this country, black people built the damn country. And at some point, we're going to have to begin to recognize, the role that we played in building this country. All of these immigrants come here, and then they take our place on the natural order of ladder of mobility. Let me give you an example. And I'll deal with it mostly from the military thing. In 1940, the census was showed that there was 89.8% of the population was white. 9.8% was black. That left 0.4% for everybody else, which was other. That meant Latinos, Asians, Eskimos, Filipinos, Native Americans. 0.4%. Now, fast forward to 1950, it had only changed to 0.5% was in that other category. Now, all of a sudden, these people have come into this country, benefited from all of the things that we have fought to eradicate, and now they're calling the shots on civil rights and everything else under the sun. But tell me this, and to show you, this is kind of the heart of it. In the late 1990s, when we fought to get proper recognition for blacks and their military heroism, people like Dory Miller was omitted. But there were 7 blacks who received the Medal of Honor. Then tell me, how did that 27 Asians, they were part of that 0.4%. So how did 27 Asians get Medal of Honors for World War II? Now that shows you, the optics of it shows you where the problem is in the society. Everybody comes here and get respect but us, and so we accept that, and we still end up spending more time fighting for Latinos to get illegal aliens to get driver's licenses than we do for our children to get quality education. Now that's where we go wrong, because we're not working for ourselves. We're working for the whole society, or our perception of what society should be, as opposed to dealing with our particular interests. And that's a major problem we have.
Mr. Bob, you work with minority, quote unquote, minority businesses to ensure that they get a piece of the pie. So let me give you a hypothetical. You're down at the harbor, you're with one of your grands, and y'all are walking through on a Sunday, and 7 people, let's pick a country, say they're from India, they're walking towards you, you're with your grandbaby. Do you go around them? Do you go through them?
I walk straight ahead. I walk straight ahead. I have no greater obligation to move than they do. I don't care how many it is. I'm not yielding my praise to anybody. Our problem is, again, I say, we have one other characteristic that differentiates us from any other group, and that is, first of all, we were complicit in the theft of this land that's called America. That's number one. It didn't. We were here first, but the expansion of it, we were complicit in the white folks' theft of it from the other people who were here, including some of us. That's number one. We got to admit that we were complicit. But
the Buffalo Soldiers were accomplices in a crime.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And in addition to that, we are the only group who has structured a movement that by design was intended that we will become invisible at the end of the day. We were the only group that's ever part of the side of the movement that said we were supposed to assimilate into a society in which we would no longer be recognized for who we are.
You talk about integration.
Nobody else has ever done that. Nobody
Integration.
has ever done that. Just like signing your own death warrant. Who does that? We did that. We did that because we thought that was the course of least resistance. Well, the course of least resistance is a surrender. Mm-hmm. You can do that anytime. In fact, we've been doing it for too long. Every time they pass a new voting rights bill, we surrender. Every time they open up a new Ruth Chris we surrendered because we stopped going to Samson's. Every time they let us into something that we built originally, by the way, it was already ours. But they convince us that it's theirs, and then they let us in and we surrender. We can't wait. We want to make as much money as we can so we can give it back to them to show them how successful we have been. Mm-hmm. We give it back to them. We call it investing in Wall Street. We surrender. You know, the fact of the matter is, Donnie, when you got to fight and there's a 3,000-mile journey, you're better off to let the enemy be the one doing the travel. Right? We are home. We gotta fight. We can't ignore this fight any longer. America owes black people a debt. And let me be clear. When I say America owes black people a debt, I didn't say white people. And the reason I didn't say white people is because the country owes us the debt. And everybody in the country got to contribute to paying it, including those blacks who think they made it. Including Oprah and Robert Smith. And all the rest of them who think that, because in the worst of times, we always had those who managed to make it. In the worst of times, there were black millionaires even through the midst of slavery. There were black millionaires even before Reconstruction and during Reconstruction. There have always been, but as a group, as a people, we have always been subjugated to the notion. Anthropologists have tried to prove it. Scientists have tried to prove it. Other people, our brains are different. We used to get double shots of radiation for X-rays. We were different. We were inferior, and unfortunately, we thought that if we could just, enough of us could make it, they would forget about it and let us be equal. No, that has never been true. That's a battle that we have to fight. And right now, we're on the edge of the cliff, Donnie. We've got no place to go. There is no middle ground anymore.
No, indeed. Yeah, so it's time to man up.
Yes,
and be people again.
Yes, absolutely. And it ain't about Trump. People, it ain't about Trump. Trump was the one that took the cork out of the bottle. He released the genie, but she was always there. That battle has been sitting on a mantle of most white people forever. You know, like waiting for somebody to say it's okay to dust it off and take the cork out. And Trump said, "Come with me."
Yeah. And like with the Democrats, you know, we always say, "Look, we take them to the dance, then they dance with everybody but us." you know, pow. You know, time to make some changes. You know, and if you talk to our people about, hey, look, it's time for us to talk about, you know, a black political party, a political party that addresses our needs, or what have you.
It begins with education, Tiger. That's right. Our greatest loss was in education of our children. Mm-hmm. You know, when I went to that you and I went to, well, I don't know about you, but I never sat in the classroom with a white person that I got the loss.
Were you Macy Lane?
No, Salisbury High.
Salisbury, okay.
The 1966, the last class to graduate from what was in Salisbury High School. The last class before they turned it into a Votech Center so we could go get properly educated at the white school called James M. Bennett and Y High.
Right. Look, I remember those schools, you know, like Macy Lane. Look.
Oh, yeah, Macy Lane was in Cambridge.
Yeah, because look, man, some of the finest students I've ever known.
Yeah.
You know, look at the generals, the 4-star general, Larry Ellis come out of that school, Bernie Hollis.
That's
all of them were the same class.
That's right.
At Macy Lane. All them Jews, the Jews family come out of Macy Lane, man.
That's right.
Look at all that they have brought to Baltimore City. And so when I look at all of those schools, then I look at my own. You know, Paul Lawrence done my high school, Donnie. I look at the first black nurse to break the barrier at the University of Maryland Nursing School was one of our own. I look at the first female doctor to graduate from the University of Maryland, Dr. Lois Young, you know, one of our own. I look at the Naval Academy. Little Robert Fig Newton broke the ice at the Naval Academy for Baltimore City, out of Dunmore High School. I look at all of those millionaires. Probably the wealthiest one would be Reginald Francis Lewis, but there was a whole lot of other millionaires too that come out of Dunmore High School, man. Many of them had gravitated or matriculated the military. People like George J.K. Benjamin. And the thing I like about and I think if you look at George Jacob Benjamin's life, he was a helicopter pilot, one of the first. He did 3 tours as a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. Then he comes home. He ended up in charge of aviation for General Electric's West Coast Division, living out there in California. Jacob was so screwed up from that war, man. He sold his house for $15 million and built one for about $40 million, right? Now, because he was messed up in the head, okay? But now, when he dies out there in California, his family brings him back home to the family plot in Quitman, Georgia. We still have those connections to our roots because we've never forgotten who we were and how we got to where we are today, because we've always known what our place was in the society and what we were up against in the society. That has never changed.
Well, you just said, Tiger, that we don't forget. Are you sure we don't forget? Because
I'm a Southerner. Look, I come out of that thing, and I know from day one who our enemy was. Okay, and look, I'm never gonna change. If we don't have our own, we're in deep trouble. This is why down south, the black businessmen down south tend to thrive, because they understood clearly, what the situation was in the society and that we had to have our own. See, once we get a chance, like Bob mentioned, we go to the white restaurants or what have you, we forget about our own, you see. And that was never anything wrong with our own.
We started integrating, and now we have abandoned East Baltimore, we've abandoned West Baltimore, we've moved to Essex, and Essex and Randallstown are fine. But what happened to where our mothers grew up at? We don't want to go back there. Attorney DeShield, we don't want to come back to East Baltimore, to West Baltimore. And now we've got other people moving back to the community.
Well, Donnie, it's not so much that we don't want to. There's nothing about the way things are structured that encourages us to stay or to come back. The fact of the matter is, most people are born, live, and die within a 5-mile radius. Most people are born, live, and die within a 5-mile radius. The people that want to live in the neighborhood are most likely those who grew up in that same neighborhood. But the problem is income. See, this is where the whole minority business thing got so perverted and misdirected. The goal was never my goal, at least, and I don't think, and I know I shared with Perrin Mitchell, who was my mentor. The goal was never to make more black millionaires. The goal was to provide more stable and family supportive income and wages for black people, because most people, black or white, if they're ever going to achieve financial stability, are going to get it as employees of somebody. See, the problem is we're schizophrenic by nature. We can't be untrue to our nature, but at the same time, we're taught that we have to learn to fit into somebody else's world. So we're schizophrenic. There's no wonder why depression and anxiety are so prevalent in the black community, because we always had to do 2 for 1. Our grandmother said, you got to be twice as better. That's another way of saying the same thing. So the fact is, so when we support black business, we ought to be supported because it provides stable income to black people. But we missed that altogether. We thought that the purpose of minority business support was so that we could buy more memberships at the Center Club, or so we could buy a bigger yacht, or buy a bigger house, or buy a bigger car. That wasn't the purpose of it. That's not how black people as a unit survived. Tulsa was successful because the businesses supported the black community as a whole, not because the people got rich in the middle of. That's fine. I don't want Oprah's money. I don't want Bill Gates' money. Most people don't want it. They just want to be able to support their families. And remember this also: the strength of the village is measured by the strength of the men. So the first thing they did was decimate the men in our neighborhood, either by incarceration, by drug addiction, by transgenderization, or by some other nonsense to take away. And then we complain that black women are in charge. What? Nature abhors a vacuum. And if the men don't step up, the women ain't got no choice. So
Tiger, they feminizing the men. If a black man goes on television, sometimes he got to smile way too much.
Yeah.
But you know, one of the other things that we've got to come to understand too is we never really understood the full impact of integration. And I'm talking about the public school system now, because we take our future, which is our children, and we put them in the hands of our enemies. Now, once we do that, then they begin to mold and determine our destiny. And we never understood that. And so what happened is, and I could see it clearly because my sister went to Western High School. I stayed at Dunmore High School, right? So I know the difference in what happened to her and what happened to me. She ends up in corporate America, but then she really, and no matter how much I love my sister, she is who she was made to be.
Yes.
You know, she's AT&T, Bell Atlantic, Verizon. That's who she is. You know, but me, you know, I come up through Dunmore High School, and I never had to deal with the things that she had to deal with. But her success was measured on how much she was assimilated into their way of thinking and their way of doing things. And so that's what she became. Now, what's happening to our kids today? Look, when I came along, civility was very important. Your manners and your respect for your elders.
Yes.
Somehow, when we give our children up to some other entity to raise, then
Time out, Tiger. Tiger, go in the corner, face the wall.
Yeah, all right.
When your daddy said, Tiger,
my daddy would have come into my school and whooped my butt in front of the class.
I brought you in this world and I will take you out.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, but what happened is, and you know, I could see it clearly during my 24 years in the state legislature, man. We continually eroded the authority of parents, and you know, in the name of progress. For instance, give you an example.
Call 911 on my mother. See what happens.
But look, man, look. Since when does a 13-year-old have an abortion without her parents even knowing about it? This don't make no sense.
In America.
You know, all right, so what happened is I saw this and I raised questions about this. And they said, well, so many children are abused by their parents, and many of them are impregnated by family members and blah, blah, this and that. And so, come on now, wait a minute. How can this 13-year-old child, you know, have an abortion without parental notification? Man, I had this argument with them, man, for 24 years in the legislature about eroding the authority and the role of parents in raising their children. And so where we are right now is we have no control over our children, and you see it out there right now. You see it right now. Okay.
When I seen a black woman come on television and said, "Lock my child up," Attorney DeShield, I said, the game is over.
Yeah,
it's over.
It's over. And Tiger's right. You know, appropriate discipline is an indispensable manifestation of real love. Appropriate discipline is an indispensable manifestation of real love.
That's right. That's
indispensable. You can't show kids you love them if you don't discipline them.
Yeah, you remember how your daddy used to say, "Boy, this gonna hurt me more than hurt you." It's gonna hurt me more than hurt you. I can't understand what they meant. It is tough when you have to discipline your child.
Yes.
But hey, man, but if your child needs that belt on his butt to correct his behavior, there's nothing wrong with a little corporal punishment. Okay. Now I grew up that way. Now other people may have grown up in different ways.
I grew up that way.
But if you don't put the fear of God in your child, you leave it for the 5-0 or the CO.
That's right.
The police or the correctional officer.
Right.
So
Exactly right.
The legislature or government will not say anything when cops beat the hell out of your children or they shoot your children, what have you. But you put a little whip on your child's butt, they're going to throw you under the jail, right?
Right.
It's okay for them to do it, but you can't discipline your own child even though you love your child. And so this is where we have a real major problem in society, and how do we get out of this thing that we're in? I don't know. But I know it's something we have to discuss. It's something we have to work at.
And where does Donald Trump fit into all of this?
Where does he fit into it? Hey, look, Donald Trump is the world's, I started to say America's worst nightmare. Donald Trump is the world's worst nightmare. He's about as bad as Hitler, man.
Well,
I don't think he's that bad. I think he needed your daddy or Mr. DeShield's daddy for 5 minutes, for one night, and he would have turned out a totally different human being. He never got his hind parts whipped. That's the problem.
Well, if he go where he's supposed to go right now, he'll get a comeuppance, okay? He needs to be up there in one of them jails. To get his comeuppance, then he'll think twice before he suggests that, hey, what was the Central Park 5 go to jail and be hung and all this kind of stuff.
The answer to the question of how do we get out of where we are is simple. If we don't, you better find whatever you believe in that's bigger and stronger than yourself and go ask for help. Because we can't fix it ourselves. We do not have the power, the authority, or the resources to really fix this world without supernatural intervention. Now you call your supernatural being whatever you want to call it. But if you better find something, you better hope it's real. You better hope it can deliver. Because I'm telling you, that's the only way out of this mess, Don. Donald Trump is the Antichrist. We living in a world where the Antichrist governs. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it will be, unless the rest of us who believe in a supernatural being who has power, unless the rest of us who believe in a supernatural being call upon that being to come help us and save us. That's the only way out of this. We can't fix ourselves. We can't. We weren't designed that way. Nobody was. We were not designed to live separate and apart from a belief in our supernatural being. That's why we're 3 parts: mind, body, and soul. Mind, body, and spirit. That's the way it was designed. God made it that way. Believe it or not, you can act like it ain't so. You can live like it ain't so. But that don't mean it ain't so. Because it is. Every civilization that's ever existed has always found a need to believe in a higher being. I don't care whether you call it the sun god, the moon god, the fish god, the water god. Everybody had a god of some sort that they had to go to because they recognized that as human beings, they lack the power. They lack the power to control their environment and their existence. And when we act like we can do it ourselves, that's what. In other words, when we reduce God to our level and say, if I can't do it, nobody can. That's why I was in a barbershop a few weeks ago. All right, people saying, well, we need because I always advocate for a different political party other than this one that we've been led to believe that we must have. So people are like, well, man, that ain't never going to happen. I said, please don't teach your children that. Please don't teach your children to be defeated before they even get into the battle. How many years ago was it somebody said there'd never be a black president? How many years ago when somebody said there would never be a civil rights act? How many years ago when they said there would never be an end to slavery? Think of what had happened to the people who made that happen if their parents had told them they couldn't do it.
Tiger, Dr. Zolikoff came on the show and said that our problem is we don't like poor black people.
I don't quite understand that.
I don't either. I think well, Dr. Zolikoff can speak for himself, but I don't understand it either.
He was saying that once we arrive, once we get our degrees, once we move to Randallstown, we no longer want to deal. And he said it's for all races. White people don't like poor white people. Chinese don't like poor Chinese people. But it's particularly so in our community we don't like poor black people. We moved to Randallstown, and we never want to go back to Collington. We never want to go back to North Avenue. We're comfortable out there with the picket fence, the bunny rabbit, the deer.
It's not that, Donnie.
Nonsense.
By nature, we avoid pain and sacrifice. The sacrifice is not intuitive. That's got to be taught. A willingness to sacrifice has to be taught. We don't get that by birth, and but we do get is a desire to avoid pain. So if I the best and what we try to avoid is the remembrance of it. So if we grew up poor, we don't remember. We'll talk about it nostalgically when we get around the bar and have a couple of drinks, but we don't really want to go back there. We don't want to be poor again, and we really don't want to be reminded of what it was like, unless we can use the conversation as a badge of accomplishment or something. So it's not that we don't want to be we don't like poor people. It's like we want to demonstrate that we ain't one of them. Because that reminds us of the fact that in reality we're no different.
But Tiger, the churches are all out in the county now. The church used to be down on Chester Street. The church used to be there on Franklin Street. The church used to be right there on Emerson Avenue. But now church has been gone away, and you got to have a bank card to go to the church to get that money out there.
Well, look, remember what Bob just said. We got to have this supernatural authority or something to believe in. When I was a kid, we had just got to Baltimore in 1948. There was a little storefront church right down the street. My mother and father both worked 2 jobs. And so we kids, we had to stay in the house and mind our own business or what have you. The people used to come out of that church and say, well, Mr. Davis, look, we will make sure they lock the door when they come home, but let the children come to church. Because in the churches in those days, they were about saving. So these were people who were believers. Yeah. It was not the business kind of thing that a church has become today. It was all about spiritual development or what have you. And I will never forget those old ladies coming to that door, to take us to church and then to make sure we get back in and look, and we all learn to read in church and Sunday school. That's why we learn to read. Our kids don't even go to church or Sunday school. So our society has changed drastically. Yeah. We have become modernized. We're no longer a spiritual based community as we once were. Now, I come out of that plantation down there, and the church was all we had. That was our entertainment. That was everything.
Exactly right.
And so we all, look forward to going to church because I was going to have a book to read. Even though I was reading about Jesus or the Bible or whatever, I had something to read, and I bought into that. I mean, when we got a book at our house, hey, man, we couldn't put the book down even if it didn't have pictures. We looked at the words, but we had a book. These kids today don't respect books. They don't respect learning to read or what have you.
Is it their fault?
Their parents, remember now, how many generations are we from the 1960s? Our children from the 1960s on was educated by or programmed by our enemies because we gave up our children to our enemies. Bob came through during the segregated time, so did I, But all those who came after us were programmed by our enemies. And so all of a sudden, what was discipline in our schools became oppression because white folks went overboard with their discipline of our children. Discipline became something that they did as a matter of course during the day with our children. Our children always needed discipline. This is how they dealt with it. And so our children never focused on learning because they was always trapped into that discipline of behavior bag.
And then there's this mass incarceration thing today.
Right. And so today we're paying we're paying the price for what we did not understand about integration and the full impact of integration, because we lost control of our future, meaning we lost control of our children. And once we lost control of our children, all was lost. So how do we regain control of our children?
How do we get regain control, Attorney DeShield?
One house at a time, one child at a time, one mind at a time. There is no magic wand. I mean, just like, you know, Carter Grant Woodson said 100 years ago, the educated Negro is our worst enemy. And for the very reasons that Tiger just mentioned. It's not the educated Negro. The Negro's been educated in the wrong place by the wrong people, because education was much more about teaching, much more than teaching 2 + 2 = 4 or ABC. It was also teaching the culture. It was teaching right and wrong. It was reestablishing and reinforcing the morals and the culture of the. And so it was enculturating the dominant society into the minds and hearts and the being of the people, the kids that were supposed to be educated. So how do you change that? That didn't happen. Tiger said that they've been doing that. It's been happening for 2 generations. A generation is typically 30 to 35 years. So maybe it takes it, but it starts one heart, one mind, one child at a time. That's the only way. And you can't be dissuaded by the fact that you can't measure what's happening in somebody else's household. You got to do it in your own. You got to do it. There's not going to be no group meeting to say we got it together. It's not the way it's going to happen. It's not going to happen that way.
Are you telling me it's not coming at 11 p.m. down by the old oak tree?
No, it's not. It's not going to happen that way. But, you know, even for example, even in my own house, with my grandkids, as much as I love them, my daughter says, you know, well, I'm going to give Solomon, my grandson, I'm going to give him a timeout because he did something. I said, well, you can give him a timeout at your house, but if he does it in my house, he's going to get his butt spanked.
You know, the other thing too,
I don't do timeout to my house.
Yeah, one of the other things too about our society when we were growing up in those segregated schools, they fortified us against a racist society. You know, they taught us, number one, that one boy, you're gonna have to be twice as good to make it, right? Yeah. Now, inherent in that is a belief that you're superior to them if you can be twice as good, right?
Right.
And so they put that in, embedded that in our mind. And then they said, boy, anything they allow you to do, you can do it better than them. And so when people ask me about our lacrosse team at Morgan, how we end up going out whooping the #1 team in the country, it's because we was black. You know, and we were programmed that we had to be twice as good and that we could not allow them to outdo us in anything. Look, when we were kids growing up, hey man, if we ever had competition with whites in anything, because see, look, remember I went to a segregated school now, right? We would never allow them to be better than us in anything. I don't care whether it was shooting marbles, you name it, tiddlywinks or whatever. We were always going to be better than them because we knew we had to be better than them. And we would be embarrassed if we were not better than them.
Except for High School Challenge. I remember this program, I don't know what they call it today, there was a thing called High School Challenge. And you know, they ask you questions, they bring the students off from different schools, and I could never, and you know, I was always on the team from Salisbury High, and we always lost miserably to the white folk. I said, these people cannot be that much smarter than me. So they come to find out, in preparation for the show, they would give them the questions that were going to be asked that night, and they gave us the one for 2 years prior. If anything. So we come off our community looking like dummies.
And look, let me give you a good example. We had this guy by the name of James Norfleet. James Norfleet was influenced by Reginald Francis Lewis's uncle, who suggested that he go into pharmacy. He then graduates with my brother from Dunbar High School, goes to University of Maryland, face all this racism down there, right? And the high cost of education. So he then goes into the Army because he's drafted. He comes out the Army, gets his degree from Morgan in 1967 in biological sciences. Now, when he retires in 2006, he's vice president of Colgate-Palmolive Oral Division He's in charge of all the scientists worldwide for Colgate-Palmolive Oral Division, right? And, you know, what we joke about is how he traveled around the world twice, you know. And look, a little old boy who could not deal with the racism at University of Maryland and, you know, the isolation, ended up, you know, going into the Army, then goes to Morgan, get a degree, and end up as vice president for Colgate-Palmolive Oil Division. They don't even talk about him at Dunmore High School, man.
They don't know about him.
Because they don't want to know about it. Okay? It's not that we haven't told them about him. Jim Norfleet, now he's let's see, I'm 82, so Jim Norfleet is about 84 years old now, living up there in New Jersey.
What can we do? We got 5 minutes left. What can we do? We're talking about the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which changed, what hasn't changed, the mindsets, white supremacy, the notion thereof, and black supremacy and the notion of that.
Well, where we are right now, and I think if you look at what happened up in Harford County, I think it was June 24th, they voted, the Board of Education up there voted to eliminate African American studies.
Yeah.
This is what we're facing, this kind of retrenchment all over the country. And you can say it's part of Trumpism, but it's also a reflection of who we are and how we have gotten lost, you know, in America.
That's up there where Marianne Lasante is. Remember her?
Yeah.
That's the delegate they call Prince George's County, the nigger district.
Yep. But remember, it's about a little bit more than her. She was not really the, you know, I mean, these people up here in Harford County will make her look like a saint.
Yeah.
You hear what I'm saying? Look at the people on that school board up there. Now, I'm sitting here looking at the NAACP and its effort, but see, they got us on the defensive now. We are defending what we thought we had achieved, you know, and no longer are we on the offensive now.
Because Tiger, we didn't even define for ourselves what achievement meant. You talk about where were the black parents when they were voting in Harford County to eliminate African American studies from the AP program or from the 6th grade or from or to take the books? Where were the why weren't there black parents that flooded that school board meeting and said, wait a minute, what the hell are y'all doing? They weren't there. We you know, we've become intellectually, spiritually, and emotionally lazy.
Okay.
We become lazy. We become too comfortable. We think we leave it for somebody else to fight the battle that we know is ours, and or that we should know is ours. And the fact of the matter is, it's a battle that if it's not fought, it will be lost. It's just that simple. If it's not fought, it will be lost. And all I got to do for whatever time I got left is keep on fighting. That's all I got to do. It ain't gonna happen in your lifetime. I'm not egotistical enough to believe that if it don't happen in my lifetime, it ain't gonna happen. I'm willing to believe that it's gonna happen when I'm gone, and I'm gonna leave here with that in my mind.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining us today. Delegate Clarence Tiger Davis, Attorney Robert Fulton Shield, Esquire. Thank you for joining us. Good morning, world.
Good morning.
Good to see you, Bob.
Nice to see you, brother.